Uh, so we're going to talk about beast modes today. One of my favorite features here. But who I am a major Domo at Sweetwater Sound. We're an online music retailer. Like I said, I love beast modes, love dataset views, but most importantly, I am Jay's arch rival on the dojo. And Jay, just to correct you here, it's not 200 points, it's 222 or 226 points that I'm beating you by. So got to make sure that that is completely accurate
I'll
for
fix
you.
that next week. Don't worry.
Good, good. So what we'll do is I've got a lot of data or beast modes to go over here today, and we may not get through all of them. That's okay. I will. These are all actually available right now on the Domo Dojo at this point, and they will also be posted to the dojo itself, just so you can easily copy and paste things and have them for reference there as well. So once this session is over later today, I'll get those posted up there for you. So you don't need to worry about frantically trying to write down all these beast modes and everything else. Just kind of enjoy the time we have and kind of hopefully we can learn some things along the way. So we'll talk about running totals, rolling averages, date manipulations. That's always a fun one, a big one. Maybe some images, hyperlinking, some custom formatting as well, and kind of some other tips and tricks along the way. So to do that, I will share my screen here. And again, it's just in the Domo Dojo under the Domo Ideas Exchange or the Beast Modes page. If you want to go there and look at those. The first one we'll talk about is the start of the week, end of the week, start of the month, end of the month. We get this question a lot on the dojo, and really it's just a matter of trying to figure out how do we calculate that. So I know that, hey, this is sort of the week that it's a part of. And to do that, it's fairly simple. It's just some simple math is all we're really doing. But if we look at the first day of the month, there is a function called day of month, which will return what the day is. So today is the 19th. So running that would give me 19. And all we're doing, we're basically just subtracting that value from the date, except we want to take one less than that because we want to go to the first. We don't want to go to the 0 day. We want to go to the first day. So we're subtracting one less. So that's how we do that for sort of the first day of the month. The last day of the month is actually a lot easier. There's a last day function. That just returns the last day of the function, right? Because the end of the month varies for the date, right? It's either 28, 29, 30, 31, depending on what month and what year. And so last day gives you that really simply. Similarly, for the first day of the week, we're going to do something similar. So instead of using day of month, we're going to use day of week. And day of week will return either a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, depending on what day it is. So 1 for Sunday, 7 for Saturday, and all the days in between. And again, what we're trying to do is we are just saying, hey, I want to basically subtract the number of days to get me back down to day 1 of the week. And to do that, day of week -1 and subtract that from our date. So today is Monday, which means it's a 2. So we're going to subtract 2 minus 1, which is 1, from 2 to get us back to 1, which is the first day of the week. And then conversely, what we do for the last day of the week, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to have adding essentially numbers to get up to 7, because 7 again is Saturday, so that's the end of the week. And again, this is all sort of assuming that, hey, Sunday's the start, Saturday's the end. You could probably modify this a little bit, doing some date manipulation and additions to, if you want to maybe start on a Monday and end on a Sunday, that sort of a thing. But this is just for this example, it's just a straight Sunday through Saturday kind of a week. But here again, we're saying how many days does it take us to get to Saturday? And we'll add that to our date, and that gives us the end of the day. You also notice here too, I've got comments on my beast modes. I think it's good practice to have a lot of comments on your beast modes, and whether it's like who's the author, who created it, when it was last modified, just to kind of give some brief synopsis, also a description, so that, hey, this is what this is actually doing, because it's a lot easier to read words to understand what it's doing rather than trying to decipher code all the time. And you're going to have people with different skill sets and different skill levels to be able to easily interpret code or not. And so it's a lot easier if there's just a simple sort of description. So moving on, in continuation with dates, beast modes for business days. Now, this is a simplified version of this where it's assuming that basically any day, Monday through Friday, is a business day. So if maybe we are closed for a holiday, or maybe the office is closed for some other reason, this doesn't care. It's still going to count that as business day because it's a Monday through a Friday. And so you'll notice here, I've got all these different columns, and this one took a little while to kind of figure out the logic of how to do this. And the way that I was able to do this is I basically just took the problem and I broke it down into different steps. And then I was able to then plot on this table here of, hey, these are the values that I'm seeing. Okay, what exactly is that returning? Does my math actually line up? And so all of that then allows me to get to kind of sort of the final product here of, hey, what exactly are we doing? So what this does is we take a difference in the dates, right? Because our weeks now are 7 days. So we're going to take, hey, these are the number of dates. Then what we do is we will actually then figure out the difference in the number of weeks. So I'm going to take the first day of both of those dates. So in my case, I'm just going current date to my whatever date. And we're trying to figure out how many weeks are in between these, because if I know how many weeks there are, then I know how many weekends there are. So I figure out how many days there are, divide that by 7, and then I multiply that by 2. So I get the number of weekend days. And then there's a sort of the special case with Saturdays. So if it is the date that you're starting on is actually a Saturday, we actually have to then subtract an additional date because we don't want to include today. And that is sort of the very brief overview of business days. There's another version that I'm not going to go over today because of time limitation, but there's another one if you want to add business days. There's another actual card on the dojo, and I'll post that to the Dojo instance, and I'll post it to the dojo as well, of how you actually would add a specific number of business days. And it's sort of just doing sort of the inverse math of that. Next up, we have number formatting. And so a lot of times when you have a number and you concatenate that with a string. So for example, in this summary beast mode I have up here, I just have total colon and then a number. Well, what happens is when we ever add a number to a string, it makes that whole thing a string. And so we then lose the ability to use Domo's in place formatting for those numbers. And so what we have to do, we kind of have to do it ourselves. And to do that, all we're doing is we just need to figure out what sort of units are we talking about. For this abbreviated version, it's a lot simpler than the other one, which we'll go over here in a minute. But all we're doing, we're trying to see what sort of units do we have here? What's the largest number of units we have? And to do that, what I'm doing is I'm basically just taking the length of my number. So basically saying, hey, what's the number and how many characters are in that number? If it's greater than 10, I'm going to say, hey, these are billions. We then divide by a billion, and we round it to 2 decimal places. You can change that if you would like. And then we just add a B for billions. Or there's 7 or 4 for millions and thousands. And if it's less than 3, then hey, it doesn't need to be abbreviated at all. And so you'll notice though that I don't have, for millions, I don't have where it says length is greater than or equal to 7. I have, and that it's less than 10, right? The way that a case statement works is it going to evaluate each and every expression until it finds one that it will match to be true. So that's why I'm doing it in descending order to say, hey, I want to get the largest unit I have possible. So I say, hey, is it greater than or equal to 10? Great. Then it's a billion. Otherwise, it's not greater than 10. So that means it's less than 10. So that less than 10 is sort of implied for the next check for the millions. And then it's also implied for our thousands, along with it being less than 7. So that's kind of a key distinction for the beast modes and making sure that you have your case statements in order. And again, with case statements, you can have multiple when clauses in there. You don't have to do case when this, else, case when this, else, right? And having this giant nested else statement or case else statements here. You can just do it all sort of in the same case statement to make it a lot easier. So next up, I'm going to go over the conditional formatting with commas. This is doing 2 things here. And we'll go over sort of the inner part first, where again, all we're doing is trying to figure out how many digits do we have. So this beast mode here goes up to 12 digits, which is 100 billion. If you'd like to go up higher than that, you can easily add 13, 14, 15 characters, however big your number is going to be. But essentially what we need to do is we need to figure out specifically which pieces of our string or of our number that we need to then slice out. And so based on that number, we know, okay, well, for 12 digits, I've got 4 sections of 3 numbers. And so I'll take the first 3, concatenate a comma, take the next three, concatenate a comma, next three, concatenate a comma, and then the next three after that. And it all sort of varies depending on how many number of characters that we have in here. Now, again, if we're Americans, we like our commas as separators. If you're, over in Europe or whatever, and you want spaces, you can easily change the commas to spaces. It's fine. So that's really all that's doing there, is just trying to put the commas in place by slicing out the different segments that we need to put in the different places, either the billions, millions, thousands, and hundreds sort of places that are there. The other thing this is doing sort of a conditional formatting. And this case, all we're just checking to see, hey, is this an even number? And to do that, I just do a mod of my number and 2, which basically says, hey, divide this number by 2 and return the remainder. So we all know from math class that if the remainder is 0 when we divide it by 2, it's even. If the remainder is 1, then it's odd. So all I'm doing is I'm conditionally saying, hey, I want to make my text green if it's even, or red if it's odd. And to do that, we have to do some HTML coding. So we've got a div and span tags in here, which basically says this is like a division here. But the key part here is the style. This is sort of like the CSS style guide that we have to say, hey, this is the color that I want to make whatever is within my HTML tags. And then we have our case statement, which conditionally sets that color value in here. And then we end our span tag with the concat, and then all the way at the bottom is we'll then add the ending tags for it. So it knows, hey, I need to stop the formatting here at this place. The caveat to this is that these HTML coding like this will only be supported in the HTML table. It doesn't work in the mega table at this point. So that's something to keep in mind, is if you want to do some sort of conditional formatting, you got to make sure that you can do it within an HTML table and display all your data you need to. So moving on, just to show you that this link works, right, this is a table that we have. It's displaying images. This is just a simple pull of the data set, the Domo Stats users data set, where it lists, hey, who's all in my instance, and do they have a profile picture or not? And that is what I'm displaying. So then the way I have it set up, there we go. Let's click on that nice little face, right? I click on the image, and it's going to take me straight to my profile page in Domo. You can conditionally set, you can set this to whatever URL you want, as long as it's a valid URL. So how do we do that? Again, we're going to use some HTML coding. So we've got the anchor tag, which is the A, and then we got the hypertext reference, which is basically saying, hey, this is where this link should go to. And then we are conditionally, with each row I have, conditionally setting, hey, this is the user ID that's going to be part of that URL. Then the other thing I have here is there is target equals underscore blank. And what that is saying, hey, open this link up in a new window or a new tab, depending on how the user has it set up. But that way it doesn't open directly over top and replacing sort of the data set or the Domo page that you have viewed. Because if you go away from the page, then you go back to it, you got to reapply your filters and things like that, which is not necessarily the best user experience. So typically I'll have all my links open up in a new window. And then basically it says, hey, anything in between my anchor tags, that's going to be the clickable thing. So that could be text if you want. In this case, I'm actually displaying an image. And you've got image, then the source saying, hey, this is the URL to the actual picture page itself. And so that's how we can make a picture, actually an actual clickable link in there as well, and dynamically define those values. One thing to note here is there are some limitations with hyperlinking. You can only use HTTP, HTTPS, or mail-to protocols. Any other sort of custom protocols will actually just remove all of the data out of that cell, and it won't actually be displayed. That's a thing that Domo does. So if you happen to want to use a different protocol, you're going to have to sort of write like a thin application in between the two to kind of redirect it then outside of Domo. Time difference formatting, another date time one that we like to see a lot here on the dojo. What we are doing is we are trying to see what is the amount of time and how can we format that in a nice formatted way to the user to say, hey, this happened like this amount of time ago. And again, right, what I did, I sort of broke it down into days, hours, minutes, and seconds, just to make sure that my formula was working and that it's all indeed correct. But to kind of go over the main one that we have is we are using the Unix timestamp function. This is one of my favorite ones to do because it makes math simple. The Unix timestamp will return the number of seconds since January 1st, 1970 at midnight. And so what we end up happening is you have, when you subtract those two numbers together, you have the difference in seconds. And then, since we have the seconds, we can easily then convert everything to days, hours, minutes, and then seconds. For days, what I'm doing is I'm actually taking the absolute value here for all my values. And that's because if I have one that is in the future, in this case, it's going to be -4 days, -8 hours, -40 minutes, and -22 seconds. That's not really that nice for visualization purposes. So what I've done is I just said, hey, is my date in the future? If it is, we're going to add a negative. Otherwise, we're not going to have a sort of a prefix on it. And then the absolute value basically just removes that negative symbol for me for all my different values that I do. So here we're just saying, what is the difference? And then we are dividing by 86,400. So that is the number of seconds in a day. I divide that, and then I take the floor. The floor just says, hey, ignore all my decimal places. So whether it's like 1.2 or 1.9, it'll just return 1. So all it's giving me is, hey, these are the number of whole days that I have. And we do something similar for the hours, except what we do is we use the modulo in here to say, all right, divide by 86,400, right? And then give me the remainder. So, hey, this is the amount of seconds from the partial day that is left over. We then divide by 3,600, which is the number of seconds in an hour. Take the floor of that, and then that's how we get the hours. Same thing for the minutes, except we're doing a modulo with 3,600 dividing by 60. And then seconds at the very, very end, you just do a modulo of 60 because that's the sort of the lowest unit that we have. And that's going to return us the remaining number of seconds that are there. Now we get into window functions. These are ones that can cause a little bit of problems at times if you don't understand how they're working, but they actually can be very, very powerful. One key note here is that window functions are not enabled in your instance to start with. So if you don't have them, you can talk to your CSM and say, hey, I'd like to get window functions enabled in my instance. But what we can do is it allows us to basically run a formula or a summary over the entire data set or a partition or section of that data set, and then return that value for every single row that we have. So if you look at the data table, you'll see that every single row in here has the same value for my data set total. And then we've got some running totals, and we got a monthly running total as well. Now, to do that, if we start with the data set total, this is sort of the basic overview of a window function. The key part is the over keyword. That is saying, hey, this is a window function. This is what it's going to be over. In this case, we just give it an open and close parenthesis. There's nothing in there, which basically says, hey, do this over the entire data set. One key thing to note here, though, which I think trips up a lot of people, is with window functions, you have to sort of do an aggregate of an aggregate. And normal SQL would be, hey, just give me the sum of this over this, and that's it. Well, the way that Domo sort of interprets the data is this would work if you don't have any other aggregates in your card. But the instance that you try and add an aggregate to like another field in your chart, it's going to break because the window function returns a single value for every single row. So we've got that, and then we say, okay, now aggregate this other field, all these records. But then Domo's like, well, I don't know how to aggregate all of these individual records from your window function here. So that's why we have to do the sum of the sum in this case. Then a running total is similar, but what we do is we add in an order by clause. And this is basically just telling Domo to say, hey, this is the order that I want the sum to be added up as. And then finally, the monthly running total is we get to define a partition. So the partition basically just says, hey, over this section of my data, I want you to do this. And then for a new section, just reset and do it over again. So in this case, we're partitioning by the year and the month, and then we're ordering by our date. So we get the running total per date. And so then we end up with our data set total, our running total, and then we are ending up with sort of this jagged sawtooth down here, which is because, right, it gets reset every single month, our monthly running total. To expand on the window functions, there's also lag and lead. And lag and lead essentially just say, hey, what was the prior value? Or what was the next value? So lag is prior, lead is next. And you'll see here that here's my 613,000. So for 4-1, that is the next value. That is the lead. For 4-3, that is the prior value. So why is that important? Well, because what we can do is we can go in and do a rolling 3-day average, right? So we can say, hey, lag, give me the value from 3 records ago, and plus the value from 2 records ago, plus the value from 1 record ago. And then we divide all of that by 3. And that's sort of how you can get that running total. One key warning here is if you are missing data, the lag and lead will not care, right? So if you're trying to do a running 3-day average and you've got day 1, day 2, and day 4, if I return the prior value, it's going to be 1, or it's going to be 4. The second value is then going to be 2, and then it's going to be 1. So it's not necessarily going to be a rolling 3-day average where you're thinking it should be days 2 through 4 because you don't have day 3 in there. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're trying to do sort of a rolling average sort of a thing. One other thing that I feel that trips up people a lot are adding nulls together. Arithmetic operators, when you add a value, like add a number and null, it doesn't know how to handle it. So basically the result is a null. And so if we happen to do sum of value 1 plus value 2, and we do all of that together, we are getting essentially 21, because 7 plus 14 is 21. Now, sort of the better way of doing that would be to say, hey, what's the sum of value 1 plus the sum of value 2? So that way it's going to add all of these together then. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 10, which actually then all add up to 25. All right. So we talked about a lot about bits and beast modes. There's still some other ones that are out there. I know we're kind of getting some close on time here, but how do we manage these things, right? There's a lot of data beast modes that are going to be out there. How do we handle them? How do we manage them? Well, to start, there are 2 different data sets out here for Domo Data Governance third-party data set connector. There's the beast mode data set, and there's the beast mode with fields. So they're going to be very similar, where it's going to show, hey, what's the card ID that it's on, data set ID, data set name, beast mode ID, beast mode name, the formula, right? Is the beast mode even valid? Is the beast mode saved to a data set, or is it applied to a summary number? And so you've got all the different things that you can help check to say, hey, how is the health of this doing? In addition to that, with the beast mode with fields, actually will list all of the different fields that are used in your data set. So it's one field per row in here, but it's going to list all the different fields. So it's like, oh, hey, I had this one field that I need to actually change from value 1 to now value 2 somewhere. Where am I using that at? How do I do that? So you can kind of utilize this data set as well. But lucky for us, there's also Beast Mode Manager, which allows us to sort of get a nice high-level visual overview of how things are actually behaving and working with beast modes. So that is under data on the Beast Mode Manager section here. We can see how many beast modes are available, how many are saved to a data set, created for a card, all these sorts of things. Which ones are not used, which ones are owned by you, which ones are locked, meaning, hey, only the owner and the admins can actually edit the beast modes. How many have invalid syntax, right? Which ones are broken? And how many are archived, which essentially is, hey, I'm removing it from the card. I'm not necessarily deleting it. It's more like a soft delete, but it's removing it from the card so that it's not going to load on the card. Because the key point here is that with all of the beast modes you have on a card, every time you load the card, all of those beast modes are being processed. And so if you happen to have a lot of beast modes, it may take a card quite a while to load and process all that, even though you're maybe not be using those beast modes on that card, but they're all saved to that data set. It's processing all of them. So we got through a lot, and we have a little bit of time. So I don't know if there's any other questions or anyone that has regarding this, but again, this is all going to be on it's all on the Domo Dojo, and it'll also be posted on the dojo as well into sort of some different topics, so it's easier to find there as well, and copy and paste and things like that.
Grant, thank you so much for your presentation. For everyone watching, I know sometimes it might feel like Grant is getting in the weeds, but honestly, truly, he is probably your number one guy, after me, of course. He's probably your number one guy.
Now, hang on. Hang on. Who's atop the leaderboard, Jay?
All right.
That's right. So I'm your guy, not Jay.
He's your number one guy for sorting out your beast modes. And what I really appreciate about Grant is he's very systematic. He has a set of functions that he tries to use repeatedly and apply that same set of functions to as many use cases as he can. And what that creates for you as the end user is, instead of having to learn all of the functions that Domo has, you just learn a small subset of them. So please, guys, do take the time to look through what Grant has put together, because truly, I'd say easily 30% of the questions that come up in Domo are related to beast modes, case statements, and window functions. Okay, yep. Joshua Boyle.
One more thing, Jay, just to reiterate, we're getting a lot of questions on this. Yes, this is actually in the Domo Dojo instance. And yes, they will also be posted to the Domo Dojo itself. They're not there yet. I haven't hit the submit button, but they will be there for you guys for your reference to kind of digest and do all of that. And I tried to do a little write-up as well, so you guys can kind of understand, hey, this is exactly what's going on. This is why we're doing these things, all that stuff. But again, if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer your questions on the dojo and pad my stats some more. Or you can just send me a direct message on the dojo as well. That's fine.
Joshua Boyle asks, when enabling window functions, are you doing this in beast modes or MySQL or Redshift? What's going on there?
So enabling the beast mode, that is specifically, or enabling window functions, that's specifically for the beast modes themselves.
In Analyzer and when you're building cards. And what about Magic and Redshift?
So Redshift and MySQL, those should already have that available, I believe. So you should be able to kind of utilize those as well if you want to do it with an actual ETL process as well.
With the caveat being, Domo is using MySQL version 5.6, which curiously is the last version of MySQL to not support window functions. Yes. We'll be sure to ask Nihar tomorrow what the plan is there. You can't use window functions in MySQL, but you can approximate it using variables. And I think I have some YouTube videos about that.
Yeah, if you're going to use window functions, just don't use MySQL at this point. That's not really the right tool for the job.
Yeah.
Magic ETL 2.0 does have, and Magic ETL 1 does have the rank and window tiles in there as well. So you can do a lot of the lag and the lead and running totals, things like that.